What's new in privacy at WWDC 2025? Hello and welcome to Growth Masterminds, the podcast for growth marketers. My name is John Coetsier. WWDC is here and there's a bunch of announcements. I want to break down briefly what's going on, what's happening, what Apple is doing in a couple different places that touch privacy. We've got some stronger default browser protections. We've got some expanded URL tracking changes. We've got advanced on-device AI that isn't sending anything outside of the device to work. And of course, we have some major updates to AAK, Ad Attribution Kit. I'm going to walk through a bunch of those. I'll probably end with AAK and go into some detail since that's probably more interesting for most of our audience. But let's start with Safari. We've got a bunch of different things going on there, right? We've got advanced fingerprinting protections now on by default in Safari 26. That's all modes, not just private browsing. That blocks access to fingerprinting prone APIs like you want to check screen dimensions, CPU cores, Apple Pay status, web audio on or off, canvas rendering. It also blocks access to local storage cookies by scripts that look suspicious, and it scrubs query parameters. We'll talk about that in just a bit, but I mean, that's significant. It's not blocking IP address, so you can still see where somebody's coming from in general, but clearly if you're going to build a more lasting device graph by taking a device fingerprint that includes a lot of different parameters, you're going to have some trouble there. Okay, so there's also expanded link tracking protection where Safari's going to strip tracking parameters. We're talking UTMs, we're talking Google Click IDs, Facebook Click IDs, other things like that. It's in private browsing, it's in links that are open from mail and messages, and in regular browsing when needed. I guess you can turn it on if you choose. So that is pretty interesting because if you're doing some kind of web to app, if you're doing other things where you're going back and forth between the web or you're doing a landing page, other things like that, and then the app, it's going to be more challenging to take parameters along. I'm sure there's ways of doing it, of constructing a URL, perhaps with a few slashes in there and some details there that pass along some parameters. But the standard ones will be a little bit more challenging. This will reduce cross-site tracking, which in general is a good thing, but it has its challenges for marketers who are simply trying to measure things. So that's a big thing to be aware of. In terms of AI and other things like that, as we know, Apple's been working on AI for a long time on device, right? Local device, using on-device Apple intelligence models. Apple's AI has been pretty underwhelming so far, of course, but what there is privacy preserving. It's not sending data off or taking it to the cloud, other things like that. And that includes things like live translation for phone, FaceTime, and messages, which is new, runs fully on device, call screen, hold assist, other things like that. Visual intelligence, seeing what's on the screen, what you're looking at through the camera lens, all that stuff. The idea is very Apple, keep anything that might potentially be sensitive on your device. Okay, the big one, of course, is Ad Attribution Kit, which is the new SKAN, the new SKAN network, and it is Apple's default framework for mobile attribution. So there's a bunch of things that are going on there. It's kind of 5 critical updates. Number 1, overlapping re-engagement windows. Number 2, configurable attribution windows. Number 3, configurable attribution cooldown periods. Number 4, very exciting, country codes in postbacks. And number 5, even easier testing. You remember that they did some updates in regards to testing and development environments for SKAN and AAK last year. Now they've done some more. Okay, I'm going to dig into each of those different things. First one I mentioned is overlapping re-engagement windows. And imagine, one scenario here is you're a retailer and somebody abandoned the cart and maybe there's 5 items in there. If you're Amazon, people might have 7 items, 15, 25 items. Currently, you only have one re-engagement conversion window. In iOS 18.4 and beyond, you'll be able to have multiple overlapping conversion windows. You can run multiple re-engagement campaigns, maybe with multiple partners, and you can use conversion tags to keep those re-engagement campaigns separate, and you can know which one worked rather than just one of them worked or something worked in terms of re-engagement. So that's a cool thing. That's a neat update. That's a great thing. We still don't have everything we want maybe in terms of re-engagement. We have some trackability there, but not full-on re-engagement the way you could do with IDFA, but at least that's another aspect that's good. Second thing was configurable attribution windows. And this is pretty cool, actually. Currently in AAK or SKAN, you can have a 30-day click-through attribution window or a 1-day view-through attribution window. In iOS 18.4 and above, you'll be able to specify a desired attribution window length. You can do that per ad network. You can do that per interaction type, a click or a view, and you can do that globally across everything, right? So you can choose a lot of different things there. You can also even ignore some interaction types. So theoretically, you could ignore all view-through ads from a specific network, at least for the purpose of attribution. This is, of course, just for installs, not re-engagements, because re-engagements typically there's not much of a time gap between the stimulus, the ad, and actually what's going on. This is pretty cool. You have more precise control over what gets attributed. Maybe you've got shorter windows for performance-focused campaigns, maybe longer for more brand and awareness-oriented campaigns, if you even do those. It's a nice option to have. Number 3, you've got the ability to configure attribution cooldowns. So right now, if you get some conversions that happen really, really quickly in SKAN or AAK, signals could get misattributed. Perhaps an install and a quick re-engagement. Maybe you've got a lot of campaigns going on. In 18.4, you'll be able to configure an attribution cooldown to block subsequent conversions. So you can set that for different conversion types, both installs and re-engagements. You might set a 6-hour cooldown for installs, and then hey, even if there's additional clicks that come in, this is the one. That's at least the one that triggered. It was the last click. It triggered. It was the straw that broke the camel's back and triggered an install. And maybe you set an hour cooldown for re-engagement so that you don't get multiple conflicting clicks or actions that compete for that re-engagement postback. So that's cool. That's interesting. It's a neat little thing. Number 4 though is kind of the big one here, in my opinion. It's country codes in postbacks, and it's kind of huge because a problem with SKAN since day one was no default geo information, meaning that if you wanted it, then you needed to spend some conversion values for it. And then you needed to hope that your campaign targeting was accurate and it accurately predicted where ads would actually be shown, and that all worked. Now your postbacks can include an optional country code which is derived from the app store itself. That's pretty cool because people download from their app store. They can change app stores and they can look at different app stores, but they have one kind of default app store, and so you know that it's for a particular country even if somebody's traveling, which is kind of important information. It is subject to crowd anonymity for privacy reasons, of course. So you have to surpass some privacy thresholds. But once you do, you'll get geo data by default when you turn it on. I can't imagine not turning it on. And that'll allow for better geo-targeting, better optimization, better campaign analysis, all sorts of different things. So that's cool, and that is kind of a big deal. Number 5 is, of course, for our development teams, which are important and need to get all this stuff done to make it worthwhile. It adds a development postbacks tool in developer settings. They can test AAK much easier. They can generate development postbacks. They don't need a live app. They don't need an app flow. They can configure conversion types, country codes, data granularity. They can send postbacks to a test server. They can update conversion values via API calls installs during tests, and they can manually transmit postbacks. So that's pretty cool. It'll make it much easier to validate your server pipeline. You won't need to run a complete add to install flow for testing, all of that stuff. Here's the challenge. Of course, there's always a challenge, right? This is AAK, and uptake, adoption of AAK is essentially zero. It's not zero, but it's essentially zero. I mean, like, it's essentially SKAN 5, right? And if you look at what's going on in the ecosystem, SKAN 4, which was released, 2 years ago, October 2022, is not even at 50% adoption yet. So most of the big players are still on SKAN 3, with the exception of TikTok. TikTok is mostly on SKAN 4. Meta, Google, Snap, and many others are essentially SKAN 3. And honestly, do they have a big incentive to update? I'm not sure that they do. They're working on different things. Google just released integrated conversion management. Meta has AEM, advanced AEM, some other things coming down the pipe as well. TikTok as well. They've released more data via advanced SAN. Snap has an advanced SAN product as well. And so they're providing more information, more touch points, that help you to do attribution via an MMP. And so do they feel a need to adopt SKAN 4 or AAK 1 or AAK 2? And I'm not sure that they're identifying either of those versions of AAK, but be it as it may, unless Apple has some big push coming, big incentives, big reasons why people need to adopt AAK, it's kind of hard for me to imagine that too many people are going to go there. So that's kind of the deal. There's a bunch of interesting things, a lot in the Safari browser, and a lot in Apple's AAK, but around the device as well, including the AI stuff that Apple is adding. That's what I'm seeing right now. If you're seeing something different, hey, ping me, let me know. Love to hear about it. I can always add it. Thanks so much. Have a great day.